We did an exclusive global 3-hour broadcast on television, radio, and the internet Sunday from right where the march began. Guests included the Grammy Award-winning musician Angelique Kidjo.
I was born in Benin, West Africa, and raised there. And every time I go back, all the time I hear from the women that sell the goods in the market how hard it is for them to have more and more goods to sell because the climate is changing and the tomato don't ripe on the same time. The corn don't. I mean, it's just like non-stop. Who are paying the price of climate change? The women of Africa. They are the ones that cook the food. They are the ones that make the balance between the family, the community, and their own children. And the scarcity of food is also linked to climate change. How are we going to feed the next generation? Agriculture is becoming more and more complicated. We have so much drought. We don't have the food that we need, enough food to sustain our life.
Is there any chance you could sing a song a cappella for our viewers and listeners all over the country and all over the world?
Well, probably.
Maybe if you look,
we'll do that.
We'll look into this camera.
Okay.
And here's the microphone. You can hold it.
So I will sing the first song I sang when I was 6 years old, where we used the drum to invite everybody to come and listen to a message and to be part of that message and to be part of the change. So it goes like this. Yolo nyitowe yolo delo ohuzu benwa chahu ye mi nanglo we konyime o mi ze hunye wate achahu sogbedoji unagbele weya. Thank you so much.
Grammy Award-winning musician Angelique Kidjo, also an Oxfam ambassador. We'll go to break with her and then more voices from the march. Finally, the foundation world is beginning to divest from fossil fuel companies. We'll bring you more. Stay with us. Angelique Kidjo performing for us during Democracy Now!'s live broadcast from the People's Climate March on Sunday here in New York City. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. She is a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador as well as an Oxfam representative to the world. As we continue our coverage of the People's Climate March here in New York, organizers estimate some 400,000 people took part. Democracy Now! Did this 3-hour broadcast from the historic march, from the launching point of the march. We're going to turn to highlights from that special. Just before the march began, I interviewed Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who's considering a run for the White House in 2016.
With about 1,000 Vermonters and several 100,000 Americans who understand that global warming is real, that it is already causing devastating problems in the United States and around the world, that it will only get worse if we do not act aggressively to cut carbon and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. This is a huge issue. It's a planetary crisis. We've got to act, and we have to act boldly.
One of the signs and one of the mantras here is we need system change, not climate change. What does that mean to you?
Well, course you need climate change. I mean, you know, the scientific community tells us we have a narrow opportunity to move. You have to do that. But you also have to change the system because, I mean, among many other things, one of the reasons that we have virtually no Republican in Congress who even acknowledges the reality of climate change is because of the role of money in politics. So we're not going to change politics in America unless we, you know, deal with the Koch brothers and the other billionaires who are now trying to buy elections. Furthermore, if we live in a society which is based on simply purchasing, consumering, more and more development without understanding sustainability, you have long-term problems.
How do you deal with money in politics?
Well, first of all, you do is overturn this disastrous Supreme Court decision called Citizens United, which gave a green light to the Koch brothers and the other billionaires to buy elections. The second thing that
How do you overturn it?
Through a strong grassroots movement. We had a vote a week ago, which the media forgot to cover. New York Times didn't cover it at all, in which every single Republican voted against allowing us to proceed to a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. So that's number one. That's what you have to do. Number two, what you have to do, in my view, is move toward public funding of elections. I think it is just not appropriate that people who have the money or the support of people who have the money can buy elections.
The issue of whether you will run for president and what that means for a presidential candidate to be here at the climate march. Number one, will you be running for president?
Well, number one, I would be here no matter what my thoughts were. This is an issue I've been involved in for many, many, many years. You know, it's no secret I'm giving thought to the possibility of running for president, getting around the country a little bit, but that decision is not going to be made for a little while.
Attending an event last night where you were speaking, the question of whether you would be running as a third-party candidate or as a Democratic Party candidate for president.
Well, that's something also. There are advantages and disadvantages of going both routes. Very difficult. On one hand, there is a lot of unhappiness with the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. More and more people are looking to alternatives, looking to become independents. On the other hand, from a practical point of view, putting together a 50-state independent political infrastructure, that ain't so easy either. So that's one of the issues that I'm looking at. But mostly here today, I am just delighted that we're going to have hundreds of thousands of people who say enough is enough. We've got to begin the process of reversing global warming.
Do you think President Obama is doing enough around the issue of climate change?
I mean, I think he is trying. I wouldn't say that he's doing enough. He can and should do more. But the major impediment right now is not Obama. It is the Republican Party, and we've got to call them out on this, you know, and we don't do it enough. These are people who do not even acknowledge the scientific reality because they're beholden to big energy money and the Koch brothers. That's where we have to be focused.
If you were president, what would you do about climate change?
We would move very aggressively to transform our energy system, and we could do this, Amy. There is unbelievable opportunity in terms of weatherization and energy efficiency. The technology is there now for massive efforts in terms of solar, wind, geothermal, biomass done properly. We could do it. We really could do it. And clearly this is a global problem, not just an American problem. What we could do in the United States is provide the technology and the support working with other countries around the world. But this is a crisis. We've got to address it.
There are scores of buses coming in from Vermont.
Yes.
Maybe the most represented state per capita in the entire country. Governor Shumlin recently said he would consider the state divesting from fossil fuels, a call that's being made by 350.org, another Vermont resident, Bill McKibben, your neighbor.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, we went through this with tobacco. We went with this through South Africa. And I think it's a great idea. And I applaud the governor for supporting it.
You've been listening to Senator Bernie Sanders. But right now, to lay out the scope of what's taking place today in this historic moment is Bill McKibben, the founder of 350.org, one of the organizations that has organized this mass march today. Bill McKibben, welcome to Democracy Now!
Amy, thank you so much for being here and for documenting what's going to be a pretty remarkable day. I think what you said was right. There hasn't been a political gathering about anything that's this large in this country for many years. And I think what it demonstrates is climate change is at the absolute tip now of people's consciousness.
I also wanted to ask you about this announcement that Mayor de Blasio, the new mayor of New York, has made around New York City's commitment to dealing with climate change and how significant it is. It's today on the front page of the New York Times. Maybe someone's got that paper. I think I see it right over there. I'm going to see if I can get a copy. It says, in a sweeping effort to reduce its environmental impact, New York City is planning to overhaul the energy efficiency standards of all its public buildings and to pressure private landlords to make similar improvements. Now, it's a pretty interesting number. The initiative is part of a pledge to be announced before the UN Climate Summit Tuesday to decrease greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050 from 2005 levels. The UN has pointed to that rate of decrease as a desired target for developed countries to mitigate the effects of climate change. And the significance is New York would become the largest city in the world to make the commitment, according to Mayor de Blasio.
It strikes me that we should have marched a long time ago. This is a good sign about what happens when people get together and ask for things. And, you know, it's a good thing to have a mayor like de Blasio who takes that seriously and goes to work on it, and I'm really glad to hear it. The real point of this is that if we assemble enough people and enough movement, then we can match the money that the fossil fuel industry has. That's all they have. They lost the argument 20 years ago about climate change, but they've won the fight because they have all the money. We don't have money, so we better assemble what we do have, which is warm bodies, and there's a lot of them out here today.
You said the Koch brothers together are the richest person on Earth?
They're the richest person on Earth, and not only that, they're more than willing to spend some percentage of that wealth making sure that nothing ever changes. There was one study that said that if the Keystone Pipeline got built, they'd make another $100 billion, the two of them.
You're from Vermont, Bill.
Yes.
We have just talked to Senator Sanders, who may run for president. But you also come from a state where there will be scores of buses that are coming here.
No, we heard there's more than 1,000 Vermonters heading down. I heard there were 23 buses, and we're hearing people filled the trains and everything else. Vermont's definitely in the house, but there's, you know, the climate train arrived from California yesterday full of people. There are buses coming from Wisconsin and Minnesota, and I mean, it's, you know, it's going to be mildly chaotic here on Central Park West for an hour or two, so people just got to be calm and cool and collected. But if you're listening to this anywhere near New York, you should be here because this is history today.
Now, the Vermont governor, Shumlin, has just said he may consider divesting the state from fossil fuels. It's something you have been demanding?
Absolutely, and you know, we've got universities and pension funds, but Vermont Governor Shumlin is the first governor to say he's going to divest his state from fossil fuels.
What does that mean?
That would be a very big boost to what's already the fastest growing divestment movement ever. States and universities and churches should not be invested in companies that are wrecking the planet. It's financially unwise because if we ever do anything about climate, they'll be out of luck, but it's morally impossible. You can't complain about the fact that Hurricane Irene is wrecking Vermont if you're also investing in the companies that are bringing you Hurricane Irene.
We're joined by a fellow environmentalist. Elizabeth Yeampierre is with us from Uprose, and we're also joined by Bobby Kennedy Jr., a longtime environmental lawyer. Bobby, if you could just step back right there and stand right there as we do this makeshift staging for a protest that is not exactly makeshift. This has been in the planning for how long?
For 8 months. We've been working diligently for 8 months.
Bobby Kennedy, talk about why you're out here today.
Well, Amy, I was here on Earth Day 1970. I was down at Union Square Park, and you know, I remember what it was like then. I remember the Cuyahoga River burning, Lake Erie being declared dead, the Santa Barbara oil spill that destroyed all the beaches in Southern California. The Peregrine Falcons, the Adam Peregrine, the Houston nest on that building there went extinct in 1969 from DDT poisoning. And a lot of people said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. That's just the way that industry works. But we put 20 million Americans out onto the street that year, 10% of our population, 1,000 demonstrations like this across the country. Largest public demonstrations in American history, and that vast outpouring of democratic power so frightened the politicians in our country that over the next 10 years we passed 28 major environmental laws. we're trying to do the same thing today. American politics is driven by two forces, and one is intensity and the other is money. The Koch brothers have all the money. They're putting $300 million this year into their efforts to stop the climate bill. And the only thing we have in our power is people power. And that's why we need to put this demonstration on the street.
Well, you've certainly put it there. What do you think your father would say?
I don't want to block.
I think he'd be very disturbed by what's happened to American democracy. I think he'd be horrified by the Citizens United case and by the subversion that we've seen of our democracy in this country by these apocalyptical forces of ignorance and greed that are funded by big oil and big coal. And, it's not the way that America's supposed to work. This is supposed to be an exemplary nation, and we're supposed to be an example of democracy to the rest of the world. Democracy and the environment are intertwined. The most important environmental law that we can pass right now, besides putting a price on carbon, is getting rid of the Citizens United case.
Well, and as you were speaking, Bobby Kennedy, the march looks like it has launched. Elizabeth, you have to leave as well. But if you could just say final words about the global nature of this protest.
Absolutely. We've got people marching all over the world in solidarity with New York City today. It's really exciting. People from the global south, from Europe, all over. So this is a big, loud noise that we're sending out to the world.
Elizabeth Yeampierre, thank you so much. We have so many people to speak to today. Thank you, Elizabeth. And now we are joined by an unusual man. His name is District Attorney Sam Sutter. He's a Massachusetts District Attorney who, in the last year, has been involved with prosecuting two environmentalists. The environmentalists are named Ken Ward and Jay O'Hara. Ken Ward and Jay O'Hara, maybe you can describe what it is you did over a year ago, and then why you're standing today with the man who prosecuted you.
Certainly. Over a year ago, we took a 32-foot-long wooden lobster boat, and we anchored it in the path of a tanker coal cargo ship carrying 40,000 tons of coal in order to try to stop it and stop burning coal because of the impact on the environment, climate.
Describe that moment, that day.
So it was a beautiful cloudless day, and we were in this little white lobster boat in front of this mountain of coal at the Brayton Point Power Station in Somerset, Massachusetts, and this huge hulking black freighter was coming in, and we were anchored there for most of the day and pretty much blocked the coal for the day, and ended up working with the Coast Guard and working with the local police, and eventually finding ourselves in court just about 2 weeks ago, where we met Mr. Sutter here.
So did you just meet outside of the courtroom today?
No, we actually we met that day, but then we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of days. So, and we're sort of forging an alliance of sorts. I mean, they're right, very right on the issue. Obviously, their action technically broke the law, but we found the perfect solution that day. Dismiss the criminal conspiracy and reduce the other charges to a civil infraction, and so now it's a question of what we do going forward. But as I said, they're right as rain on the issue.
So did they open your eyes? I mean, what happened when a year ago this case was put on your desk? You're the district attorney. These guys stopped, what was it, 40,000 tons of coal from coming into one of the largest regional coal plants in the area?
Well, it's a non-violent case, obviously, and I've got 3 cities with gang violence and gun violence. We've done a lot to reduce it, but it's still there. So it wasn't a prominent case. My press secretary kept saying to me, this is a big case, this is a big case, but I didn't really focus on it until about a week to go before the trial. And then when I did, I mean, I think that the science is now reaching the point, as far as global warming, that it's just overwhelming. I mean, you have to be a modern-day Luddite not to accept what's taking place and try to do. And now the question is, what are we going to try to do about it? And that's why I'm here today, and that's why we're getting to know each other better.
So are you marching together in the Massachusetts delegation?
I believe so.
Absolutely. That's
Did you ever think this day would come?
Blown away.
It's pretty surprising, but I think when we, as activists, as people of faith who really care about this, step out and do something bold, it creates the space for others to step out and be bold.
Well, I want to thank you all for being with us. I want to thank you, District Attorney Sam Sutter, as well as Jay and Ken. As we turn right now on the corner of Central Park West to Sting. That's right, the musician Sting. Hi, Sting. It's great to see you.
How are you? Nice to be here.
So what are you doing here?
Well, I'm with the indigenous group here, you know, and they've always been at the forefront of this struggle, and I think it's right that they're at the front of it. Their message has always been the same: the planet's in danger, and you better wise up. And you know, there's a very, very well-financed, well-organized campaign to sow complacency about climate change at the behest of oil companies, and it's propaganda. These people aren't complacent. I'm not complacent. We have to do something. Today is the day.
And why march with indigenous people? Talk about your involvement. People certainly know you as a musician, but you're also a major global environmental activist.
Well, you know that the indigenous people's message has been consistent from the beginning of this thing. They're saying we're in danger, and what endangers them in their homelands endangers us here in New York City. It's the same planet. It's a consistent and very simple message, and that's why I'm with them today.
You spend time with world leaders who are in awe of you. What do you tell them?
I don't think they're...
Who have rocked out to you? What do you tell them?
Only what I'm telling you now. Listen to the people who know, which is the indigenous community. You know.
Do you think President Obama is doing enough?
No, I don't think anybody's doing enough, frankly. I think, you know, we need to really pool our resources to make sustainable energy a reality. You know, the world is full of energy. We have solar power, wind. We can do more than just dig oil out of the ground and destroy the climate.
Britain, your home country, Britain?
No, none of us are doing enough. None of us are doing enough. But we need government to step up to the plate.
There's a UN climate summit on Tuesday. Your thoughts about that? There's concern about the level of corporate involvement.
Yeah, well, a lot of corporations will pretend they're trying to save the planet and they're doing the opposite. So I have no patience with that kind of whitewash, but we've got to be careful.
There is an interesting irony here as the gathering is here at Columbus Circle, and it's the indigenous people of the world who are leading this march and will be passing the Christopher Columbus statue. We're joined right now by Sonia Guinansaka of Culture Strike. Did I pronounce your name correct?
Yes, Sonia Guinansaka.
So Sonia Guinansaka, you're wearing a T-shirt that says undocumented, unafraid, unapologetic. That is really the motto of the Dreamer and immigrants' rights movement. How does that relate to climate change?
Yeah, so I'm actually here with Culture Strike, and we're a national network of artists, musicians that focus on migrant justice. And so one of the things that we wanted to showcase is that climate change affects, you know, frontline folks like migrant communities, you know, where there's a forced migration happening. And so we want to acknowledge that, but also say, you know, we're here, we're unafraid, we're here also to fight for Mother Earth.
We're standing in front of a large group of people who are holding signs in the shape of life preservers. And we're going to see if right now we can get someone to come over. Excuse me, can you come over? Can someone come over and talk about why you're here? Can someone come over and talk about why you're here? Okay, here we have a woman. It says Red Fern Houses. Where are the Red Fern Houses? But first, start off by saying your name.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Combs. I live in Red Fern Houses in Far Rockaway, Queens. It's a NYCHA development, and we didn't get that much of an impact as down the beach in Far Rockaway, but we're here for everyone that suffered in Sandy.
What does climate change mean to you?
The climate change means to me, my grandchildren may not have the same things I was able to and took advantage of. And they might have to come outside and mask and things like that come 25, 30, 50 years. So I'm out here so my grandchildren and everybody else's grandchildren can live a good life and breathe good air and have lakes and all that good stuff.
Thank you very much. Dr. Steffi Woolhandler, what's a doctor like you doing in the streets of New York?
Well, there's several hundred doctors in the physicians contingent, medical students as well. And we're here because this is a global warming is a health crisis. We're seeing, we saw tens of thousands of deaths from cholera related to algae blooms. We've seen the mosquitoes that carry malaria and dengue fever moving north and moving to higher elevations. We saw 1,000 people die in New Orleans because of a hurricane. There's no way the healthcare system can deal with this problem alone. We need to be working to stop global warming now.
And I believe I see Mary Robinson and the Foreign Minister of the Marshall Islands, Tony DeBruym. I welcome you both to Democracy Now! Nice to see you again. Why are you here? Let's begin with Mary Robinson.
We want people all over the world to come out and demand that their leaders change course. I was in Samoa with Tony DeBruyn and other leaders of the small island developing states, and they had tears in their eyes at times because the situation has become so serious. But it has affected New York. It affects everywhere now. And we are not on course for a safe world. We need to go below 2 degrees Celsius. And we'll have this climate summit in 2 days' time. And the leaders of the world have to hear the pressure, not just in New York, but all over the world today.
And Mr. DeBruyn, the Marshall Islands.
6 feet above sea level, sitting in the middle of the Pacific, one of the 5 most vulnerable atoll countries in the world. I join Ms. Robinson in saying that we consider this to be a wonderful occasion to be able to tell the world that the problem of climate change is now and we must deal with it now.
I see a woman who has made history right behind us. Her name is Kashama Sawant, and she is the first socialist city council member in Seattle. Talk about why you've come from Seattle.
We're here mainly because this is an absolutely historic weekend for the budding movement against climate change. And the fact that hundreds of thousands of people are here marching together in solidarity shows that they are more than ready for collective action. And what we were talking about last night was that this collective action needs to be channeled into really radical, militant, non-violent mass movements that will raise concrete political demands. What do we need to end, to really fight climate change? We need an end to fossil fuel use. We need a rapid transformation of the global economy into renewable energy. We need a massive expansion of mass transit, which will generate millions of unionized living wage jobs, so we don't buy into the false dichotomy between jobs and the environment. But to make all this happen, we need huge movements to put intense pressure on the establishment and not expect that they will do it. We know that they haven't been doing it, but also to explain why that is so. Why haven't climate summit after climate summit solved the problem? It's because the billionaires who own the oil corporations have no incentive to acknowledge climate change, because if they did, that would mean giving up their ideology, giving up the capitalist system that benefits them.
Let's see who's up next. Why don't you come on over? Come on over, and why don't you introduce yourselves? Why don't you stand right here? And what are your names?
My name is Nailu, and my name is Adadayo.
And what are you doing here?
We're at the climate march.
Okay, so I see your name is
Nailu.
Your name is Nailu, and I see right here, Nailu, you have a notebook, you have a pen, and you have a tape recorder that says Indie Kids. How old are you?
I'm 9.
What are you doing?
I'm interviewing people for the newspaper.
For Indie Kids newspaper? Can you read me a little from your notes? These are your questions? Can you read me what your first question is?
Why are you here at the People's Climate March today?
And what is your second question?
What do you think could be accomplished with this march?
And what is your third question?
Have you ever been in a march like this before?
And have you?
No.
Just some of the voices from the 400,000-strong People's Climate March. Visit our website at democracynow.org for the full, exclusive 3-hour special from the launch of the march that took place on Sunday here in New York City. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. When we come back, foundations are divesting their assets from fossil fuel companies. We'll speak with a representative of one of the foundations that spearheaded this movement. Stay with us.